Hey there. Welcome to Nook Bedtime. I'm here to keep you company while you drift off. Before we begin, take a slow breath in and let it out. Forget the noise of the day for a while. If you enjoy stories like this, you can follow Nook Bedtime for more nights filled with quiet whispers and eerie tales. Now, close your eyes if you want. Let the sound of rain take over. Tonight's story is called The Guests at Hollow Creek. The hallway was warm, but it felt too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes you think someone just stopped talking a second ago. Evan wiped the rain from his face and set his bag down near the door. The floorboards gave a faint sigh under his shoes. A soft yellow light glowed from a chandelier above, and dust floated through the air like drifting snow. He took a few careful steps forward. The ticking clock was louder now, deep and steady, as if the house had a heartbeat of its own. "Hello," he called again. Nothing. He moved toward the living room. A fire was burning in the fireplace, but no one was there. The logs crackled softly, and the flames made the shadows stretch and twist across the walls. On the coffee table, someone had left a half-full teacup. The steam had faded, but the scent of lemons still lingered. He looked around. There were old paintings on the walls, portraits of people who all seemed to be staring somewhere past him. Their eyes caught the light in strange ways, as if they shifted slightly when he moved. He smiled to himself. Probably just tired, he thought. Long drive, heavy rain, and too much caffeine. He found a note on the mantel, folded neatly. His name was written across it in blue ink. "Welcome, Mr. Brooks." He unfolded the paper. "The room upstairs is ready for you. Please make yourself at home. Breakfast will be served at 7 E." There was no signature, only that single letter. Evan looked toward the staircase at the far end of the hall. The light upstairs flickered once, then steadied. He hesitated. For a moment, he thought he heard movement, a soft shuffle from above, like someone walking barefoot on old wood. He told himself it was the wind. It was always the wind in places like this. He climbed the stairs slowly, his hand trailing along the polished rail. Each step creaked, and each sound echoed back at him. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched in both directions. 3 doors on each side. One of them was slightly open, a faint light glowing through the gap. Evan took a deep breath and stepped toward it. The door opened easily. Inside was a bedroom, clean, quiet, and much warmer than the rest of the house. The bed was already turned down, the sheets crisp and white. A small lamp on the nightstand flickered softly. On the wall above the bed hung another photograph. The same group of people he had seen downstairs. But this time, the man who looked like him wasn't standing at the edge. He was in the center. Evan stared at the photograph for a long time. The faces around him were blurred with age, but his own face, or the face that looked like his, was clear. Same eyes, same half-smile, even the small scar above the eyebrow. He felt a chill crawl along his arms. He told himself it was just a coincidence. Old houses always had strange things. People saw what they wanted to see. He set his phone on the table. No signal, of course, just the same blinking battery icon. He thought about turning on the TV, but there wasn't one. Not even a radio. He sighed, kicked off his shoes, and sat on the edge of the bed. The mattress was softer than it looked. The rain outside had softened too, now a faint patter against the windows. For the first time that night, the silence felt almost comforting. The fire downstairs still crackled faintly, and the smell of wood smoke drifted up through the floorboards. He leaned back, letting his head sink into the pillow. The clock in the hallway chimed once, a low, slow sound. 11 o'clock. He closed his eyes. A few minutes passed, maybe 10, maybe less. Then came a knock. Soft. 3 taps against wood. He opened his eyes, heart thudding. Another knock. He sat up, listening. It sounded like it came from the hallway, maybe the door across from his. He waited. The sound didn't come again. Evan rubbed his eyes, shook his head, and lay back down. He must have imagined it. He turned toward the wall and pulled the blanket up to his chin. The warmth of the room made his eyelids heavy again. Just as he began to drift off, he heard something else. A voice, low, almost whispering. Too faint to understand, but it was there. He held his breath. It came from the other side of the wall. Someone was speaking slowly, rhythmically, as if repeating a single phrase again and again. But the words didn't sound like English. He sat up again, pulse racing. The whispering stopped. Silence returned, thick and absolute. He waited a while longer, then switched off the lamp. As the room sank into darkness, he turned once more toward the window. There, faintly reflected in the glass, was the outline of someone standing in the doorway behind him. When Evan opened his eyes, morning light filled the room. For a moment, he didn't remember where he was. The ceiling above him was painted white, cracked in a few corners, and the smell of old wood filled the air. The storm had passed. Birds were calling somewhere outside. He sat up slowly, listening. The house was still, too still. The doorway was empty. No one stood there. He rubbed his face and exhaled. It must have been a dream, he told himself. The long drive, the thunder, the house, the photograph. It all played tricks on his half-asleep mind. He got up, walked to the window, and pulled the curtain aside. Outside, the hills were covered in mist. The grass glistened with rain, and the road leading back to town looked even narrower in daylight. He spotted something at the edge of the property, an old wooden gate leaning slightly open. Beyond it, a path disappeared into the trees. He turned away, still uneasy. Downstairs, the fire had burned out. The room smelled faintly of ash. On the dining table, someone had set out breakfast, toast, fruit, and a small pot of jam. Next to it was another note. Good morning. I hope you slept well. Please feel free to explore the house today. E. Evan smiled nervously. He looked around again, expecting someone to appear, but the house remained quiet. He sat down and took a bite of toast. It was cold but fresh. The sound of the chair scraping the floor seemed louder than it should have been. After breakfast, he decided to look around. The house had more rooms than he realized, hallways that turned unexpectedly, doors that opened into smaller corridors, and windows that didn't quite line up from one floor to the next. Everywhere he went, he felt watched. Not in a frightening way, not yet, but in a way that made him aware of every step. In one of the back rooms, he found a study filled with old books and framed letters. The air smelled of dust and paper. On the desk sat a typewriter. A sheet of paper was already rolled inside. There were just 3 words typed neatly in the center. "You came back." Evan froze. He looked around, half expecting to hear footsteps or see movement behind him, but the house stayed silent. He reached out and touched the keys. They were cold, almost damp. He pressed one. The sound echoed in the empty room. A door creaked somewhere upstairs. He turned toward the sound, heart thumping faster. The footsteps were slow, barefoot again, moving across the floor above him. He called out, "Hello? Is someone here?" No answer. He took a cautious step toward the hallway. The sound stopped. The air felt heavier now, the kind of stillness that made his ears ring. He stood there for a long moment before finally whispering to himself, "Okay, just old pipes. Nothing weird. Just pipes." Then he turned back to the desk. The typewriter had changed. There was a new line on the paper. "Don't go upstairs." Evan stared at the words on the paper. They hadn't been there a moment ago. His breath came out in a shaky laugh. He wanted to believe it was a prank, maybe some clever setup from the host. He ran a hand through his hair and whispered, "Very funny," but his voice sounded too loud in the stillness. He stepped back from the desk and looked around the study again. The air felt cooler now. A faint draft brushed past him, carrying the smell of damp wood and something else. A faint trace of perfume, the same scent he'd noticed when he first entered the house. He glanced toward the door. The hallway beyond was dim, the light flickering slightly as if the bulbs were tired. He told himself he'd check upstairs anyway. He wasn't going to be scared by a typewriter. The staircase groaned under his weight. Each step felt slower than the last. At the top, the hallway stretched out in front of him, lined with closed doors. Only one was slightly open, the same one as before. He walked toward it. The carpet muffled his footsteps. The air smelled faintly of rain again, though the windows were closed. He pushed the door open. Inside, the room was just as he'd left it. Bed made. Lamp off, nothing out of place. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Then, from behind him, another door creaked open, slow, hesitant. He turned quickly. Down the hall, the last door on the right had opened a few inches. He could see darkness beyond it. He hesitated. Then he called out again, voice low. "Hello, is anyone there?" A pause. Then came a soft thud, like something dropping to the floor. He walked closer. The floor under his feet gave tiny cracks with every step. He reached the door and pushed it open. The room inside was nearly empty. Just a small table, a chair, and a mirror leaning against the wall. A thin layer of dust covered everything. On the floor lay a single key. He crouched and picked it up. The tag attached to it said "Cellar." The moment he touched it, the light flickered again. Once, twice, then steady. He stood still for a long time. The house was silent again, but he could feel something, not sound exactly, more like pressure or presence. He looked at the mirror before leaving. For a second, he thought he saw movement, just a flicker behind his reflection. But when he turned around, the room was empty. He slipped the key into his pocket and whispered to himself, "Okay, cellar later." Then he left the room, closing the door gently behind him. Evan walked slowly down the hallway, the key in his pocket feeling heavier with every step. He tried to focus on ordinary things: the worn carpet, the crooked picture frames, the faint sunlight spilling through the curtains. But the house was whispering in its own way. Soft creaks, subtle shifts in shadows, the faint hum of the walls settling. He reached the top of the stairs again and looked down. The staircase stretched into darkness, even though the morning sun streamed through the front windows. A chill ran along his neck. He shivered, reminding himself that it was probably just a draft. He turned back to the hallway. Something made him pause. A soft tapping, gentle and deliberate, came from the far end. Not loud enough to be heard clearly, but steady. 3 taps paused, 3 taps again. He whispered to himself, "It's the house, nothing else." Yet his heart beat faster. Evan moved toward the sound. Each step was slow, careful, measured. He reached the last door on the right, the same door that had opened earlier. The air felt colder here. He took a deep breath and pushed the door open. The room was empty. Nothing had changed. He stepped inside. The floorboards creaked beneath him. He glanced at the corner of the room and froze. There, standing in shadow, was a figure. Tall, thin, motionless. Its face was hidden in darkness. Evan's voice caught in his throat. Who's there?" No answer. The figure shifted slightly. A slow, deliberate step forward. Evan stumbled back. His hand brushed against the mirror. For a heartbeat, the figure disappeared. But in the reflection, he could see it clearly. A pale face, almost translucent, eyes wide and unblinking, staring directly at him. He fell backward, heart racing, and the door slammed shut behind him. The key in his pocket burned against his skin. He knew, before he even touched it again, that whatever was in this house was waiting for him to make the next move. And the next move was his choice. Evan sat on the edge of the hallway carpet, key in hand. He thought about the cellar. Dark, cold, hidden beneath the house. A place no one visited unless necessary. The sunlight outside made the thought almost impossible. In daylight, houses like this felt ordinary, cozy even, but he knew the key meant something. The house had given it to him for a reason. He stood slowly, every movement careful, deliberate. His fingers brushed the banister as he moved down the stairs. Each step creaked in protest. At the bottom, the air changed. Cooler, damper, heavier. The smell of earth and old wood filled his nostrils. He found the door. A simple wooden panel with an iron handle. The key slid in easily, turned smoothly. The door groaned as it opened. Darkness stretched inside. The faint light from the hallway barely reached the first step. He stepped forward, one foot, then the other. The air smelled of wet stone and something else, something faintly metallic. He reached the bottom. The cellar opened wide before him, walls lined with shelves. Old jars, dusty boxes, and wooden crates filled every corner. The sound of dripping water echoed somewhere in the distance. He noticed a staircase at the far end, leading even lower, into deeper darkness. The air grew colder. His fingers itched as if the shadows themselves were brushing against him. He wanted to turn back. The safety of sunlight, of normal rooms called to him, but the key in his pocket seemed to pulse, urging him forward. Evan took a deep breath and stepped toward the stairs. Evan's hand hovered over the first step of the lower staircase. The darkness seemed thicker here, almost solid. He could hear the faint drip of water somewhere to his left and the echo of his own breathing. Each step he took made the wooden boards moan under his weight. The key in his pocket felt heavier now, like it was pulling him forward. At the bottom, he saw a small, flickering light. It wasn't much, just enough to reveal stone walls and a low ceiling. Shadows danced along the walls, stretching and shrinking as if alive. He stepped forward carefully. His fingers brushed against a dusty shelf. Old jars rattled softly. Some toppled over with a muted clatter. He froze. The sound seemed to travel farther than it should, echoing into the deeper darkness. A sudden chill ran down his spine. He glanced around, eyes straining. The light flickered again. There, across the room, he saw something unusual. A wooden chest, unlike the others, sitting in the middle of the floor. Its surface was worn, edges chipped, but a strange shimmer glinted from the corners. Evan's heart thumped faster. He stepped closer. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for the latch. A whisper brushed against his ear. Not a word, just a sound. Soft, almost like someone exhaling. He froze. The key burned in his pocket. Finally, he lifted the latch. The chest opened slowly. Inside, layers of old papers and photographs. Most were yellowed with age. He picked up one. A face stared back at him. A pale, familiar face. It wasn't him, but it reminded him of someone he had long forgotten. He dropped the photo, heart racing. The shadows seemed to gather closer. The flickering light dimmed. Evan realized he wasn't alone. Something was watching. Evan's fingers lingered on the edge of the chest. He forced himself to breathe slowly to calm the pounding of his heart. The shadows no longer flickered. They were still, almost waiting. He picked up another photograph. This one showed the house, but not as it was now. It looked newer, brighter, almost welcoming. And in the window, a figure stood watching, pale, still and familiar. Evan swallowed hard. The figure, it looked like the one he had glimpsed in the mirror upstairs. A soft shuffle echoed somewhere behind him. He spun around. Nothing. Just the empty shelves, the stone walls, and the low ceiling. He tried to convince himself he was imagining things. The house was old. Old houses made noises. Shadows moved. Light flickered. He turned back to the chest. Inside, a small notebook lay on top of the papers. Its leather cover was cracked and soft. He opened it carefully. The first page read in faded ink. If you've found this, you've come too far. Some doors are meant to remain closed. Evan's pulse quickened. He flipped the page. More writing. Names, dates, small drawings. Rooms, hallways, doors, some crossed out. A chill wrapped around his shoulders. It felt like the house was breathing with him, moving with him. He looked at the stairs behind him. The way back seemed farther now, darker. Something shifted in the corner of the room. A faint silhouette appeared. Evan froze. The figure didn't move closer. but its presence was undeniable. Silent, patient, watching, he held the notebook tightly. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but curiosity, that slow, creeping curiosity, made him step forward. The figure remained still, as if waiting for him to make a choice. And Evan knew, whatever was in this house, in this cellar, it wanted him to go deeper. Evan stood at the bottom of the cellar stairs, notebook in hand. The silhouette in the corner didn't move. It was just there, watching. He swallowed and reminded himself to breathe slowly. Inhale, exhale. The stairs leading further down were narrower, steeper. The stone felt damp under his fingertips. A faint musty smell rose from the darkness below. He touched the edge of the first step. It was colder than the rest of the cellar, almost as if the stone itself didn't want him there. He took the first step, then another. Each one creaked, echoing into the blackness. The notebook pressed to his chest felt heavier. Inside, the pages seemed to whisper, the faded ink almost moving in the dim light. A low hum filled the air, soft and steady. He couldn't tell if it came from the walls, the earth, or the figure still waiting above. At the bottom, the narrow passage stretched forward, barely wide enough for one person. The walls were cold stone, slick in some places with moisture. Evan took a cautious step, then another. The hum grew slightly louder. A rhythm emerged. Slow, patient, like a heartbeat. He glanced back. The cellar above was empty now. The figure had vanished. A shiver ran down his spine. He pressed on. Ahead, a faint glow appeared. Not from a bulb, but something else. Soft, almost golden, like sunlight filtered through fog. He moved closer, each step measured, deliberate. The passage bent to the left, and then he saw it. A door, small and heavy, carved with strange symbols. The glow came from behind it. Evan paused. The key in his pocket burned against his side, as if reminding him that this was the reason he had come. He took a deep breath and reached for the handle. Evan's fingers closed around the door handle. It was cold, colder than the air around him. A faint vibration traveled through the metal into his hand. He hesitated. A soft voice in his mind whispered, "Do you really want to know?" He nodded, though no one could see him. The notebook in his hand pressed against his chest. It seemed to pulse with its own rhythm, almost alive. Slowly, he turned the handle. The door resisted at first, then creaked open. A golden glow spilled into the passage. It wasn't harsh light. It was soft, warm, inviting, and somehow wrong. The air smelled faintly of earth and something floral, a scent he couldn't name. It was familiar, comforting, but it made his skin crawl. Evan stepped inside. The room was circular. Walls of smooth stone rose around him. In the center, a pedestal held a small, ornate box. It was decorated with the same strange symbols as the door. The golden light seemed to radiate from it. It called to him. He took a cautious step forward. The floor beneath his feet hummed softly, like the room itself was breathing. Evan reached the pedestal. His hand hovered over the box. He could hear his heartbeat in the silence. Louder, louder. The notebook in his hand felt like it was vibrating now. as if urging him to open the box. He swallowed hard and lifted the lid. Inside, nothing, just an empty space. Evan frowned. He pulled the box closer. The symbols along the edge seemed to shift in the golden light. Lines that hadn't been there before. Curves that hadn't existed. And then he heard it. A soft whisper. Not from the box. Not from the walls. But inside his own mind. Welcome, Evan. His breath caught. The air grew heavier. The golden light deepened, almost liquid in its movement. And in that moment, Evan realized he had crossed the line. There was no going back. The house, the cellar, the room, they weren't just old and abandoned. They were alive, watching, waiting, patient. And now, so was he. Evan stood frozen, staring into the empty box. The golden light flowed around him, painting the walls with shadows that seemed alive. He could hear the faint whisper again, soft and deliberate, curling through the silence. You've come far, and now you will see. The words weren't spoken aloud. They were in his head, gentle, insistent, almost soothing, and terrifying. He stepped back from the pedestal. The box pulsed faintly, as if breathing in rhythm with him. The symbols along its edge glimmered like they were written in liquid gold. Evan opened the notebook. The pages seemed to tremble in his hands, and the writing had changed. New lines, freshly inked, appeared in handwriting he didn't recognize. To see is to understand. To understand is to accept. Are you ready? He swallowed hard. The room felt smaller now, closing around him in the golden haze. A soft sound echoed, almost like footsteps, but there was no one there. Evan took a tentative step forward. The pedestal seemed to respond, tilting slightly as if acknowledging his presence. He reached into the box again. This time, he didn't see emptiness. A faint warmth spread through his fingers. A memory or a vision flashed across his mind. A house, but not this one. A family laughing, a child hiding behind the curtains. A candle flickering on a table, the shadows stretching across a room. The vision vanished as quickly as it came. Evan staggered back. The golden light shimmered and shifted, forming shapes that he could almost recognize. Faces, hands, eyes watching him. And then the whisper returned, closer, insistent. All that was hidden, all that was forgotten, now must be remembered. Evan's chest tightened. He realized the house was not just a place. It was a keeper of memories, of secrets, of things long buried. And now, it had chosen him. He could feel it in the weight of the air, in the pulse of the light, in the tremor of his own hands. Evan wasn't just exploring the house anymore. He was part of it, and somewhere deep below the cellar, the heart of the house waited. Evan stepped away from the golden light. His mind raced, yet his movements were careful, deliberate. Every sound echoed in the stillness of the cellar. Every breath seemed louder than it should. The notebook trembled in his hands. Lines of ink shifted, moving across the page as though the words were alive. He followed the narrow passage, walls slick with moisture. The soft hum that had guided him below now pulsed steadily, like the heartbeat of the house itself. Ahead, the passage widened slightly. A faint outline of another doorway appeared, partially obscured by shadows. Evan paused. The key in his pocket seemed to vibrate, urging him forward. He approached the door slowly. The symbols carved into it were older, deeper, and darker than the ones on the box. They looked almost like warnings, etched with care over many years. He touched the handle. Cold, unyielding. The soft hum grew louder, wrapping around him. He felt his chest tighten again. But curiosity, that creeping curiosity, pushed him forward. With a gentle push, the door opened. A chill swept through him, colder than anything in the cellar. Inside, the chamber stretched wider than the rooms above, a hollow space lined with stone and shadow. The golden glow from the box faintly lit the edges, but most of the room was in darkness. Evan stepped inside. The air smelled of earth, metal, and something faintly sweet. A layer of dust covered the floor, disturbed only by footprints not his own. He moved cautiously, following the faint outline of a raised platform in the center. On it lay objects, jars, tools, and papers, old and yellowed. Something about the room made him shiver. It wasn't just the cold. It was the feeling of being watched, of history pressing down on him, waiting for him to understand. And then he saw it. A mirror, tall and dark, leaning against the far wall. Its surface rippled faintly like water. Evan's reflection shimmered, twisted slightly. And in the corner of the mirror, something else moved. Not a reflection. Something alive. Evan's heart thumped in his chest. The mirror shimmered softly, the surface like liquid glass. He took a cautious step closer. The figure in the corner moved again. Not a reflection, but something separate. It was pale, thin, with eyes that seemed to absorb the golden light from the box. It didn't speak. It only watched. Evan felt the notebook tremble against his chest. The pages flicked open on their own, lines of ink moving in shapes he didn't recognize. The words formed slowly, deliberately. You are here. You are ready. But are you willing? He swallowed hard. The air in the chamber felt heavier now, thick, pressing against his lungs. He could hear the soft hum of the house, the pulse that had guided him from the cellar. It was stronger here, faster, insistent. The figure in the mirror stepped forward slightly. It didn't leave the glass. It only leaned as if studying him. Evan's hand hovered over the notebook. Something inside told him to read aloud. He whispered the first line, his voice shaking. I am ready. The mirror's surface rippled again. The figure moved closer. The air smelled of earth, dust, and faintly of flowers, like the golden light had a scent. And then he saw it, not in the mirror, but behind it. A small door, almost hidden in the shadows of the wall. The figure in the mirror tilted its head. It gestured subtly, urging him toward the door. Evan stepped closer. Each footfall echoed. The notebook pulsed, warm now, almost alive in his hands. He reached for the door. Cold metal under his fingers. The key burned in his pocket, urging him to unlock it. With a deep breath, he turned it. The door creaked open. Beyond it, darkness. But it wasn't empty. Shapes moved just beyond his vision. Whispers filled the space, soft, distant, almost forgotten. and then the hum became a voice. Soft, almost gentle. Welcome to what was hidden. Welcome to what must be remembered. Evan realized in that moment that the house had chosen him for a purpose. Not just to explore, not just to uncover its secrets, but to witness, to remember. And the deeper he went, the more the house and its memories would claim him. Evan stepped through the door. The darkness was thicker here, but not empty. Shapes shifted in the corners of his eyes, shadows that seemed almost human, but never fully. Whispers curled around him, soft and careful, like they didn't want to be noticed too quickly. The notebook in his hands pulsed steadily, warm against his chest. Lines of ink moved slowly across the pages, forming words he could read clearly now. Face what was hidden. Accept what was forgotten. Only then can the light return. Evan swallowed. He took a cautious step forward. The shadows parted slightly as if allowing him passage. In the center of the chamber, a low stone table appeared, half buried in the darkness. On it lay objects, personal belongings, faded photographs, trinkets from lives long gone. He recognized some immediately. Toys, books, a pair of glasses broken at the hinge. The past pressed against him, memories he had never lived, but somehow felt. The figure in the mirror remained still, its eyes fixed on him. It didn't move, but Evan felt its attention like a weight on his shoulders. He glanced back at the door. The way out seemed distant, as if the house itself had stretched the passage behind him. A soft whisper drifted from the shadows. Some doors, once opened, never close again. Evan knelt at the stone table. The photographs were cold to the touch, the faces familiar yet unfamiliar. He picked up a small journal. Its pages were filled with handwriting he didn't know. Stories, memories, confessions. And as he read, he realized the house wasn't just keeping memories. It was collecting them. Every life, every secret, every lost moment. The golden light from the box flickered at the edge of his vision. It pulsed, soft and warm, almost like a heartbeat he could feel in the room itself. And the whispers grew stronger, surrounding him, guiding him. Remember, witness, accept. Evan realized then that he was no longer an intruder. He had become part of the house, part of its story. And the figure in the mirror, it wasn't just watching anymore. It was waiting for him to understand. Evan sat cross-legged on the cold stone floor of the hidden chamber. The golden light from the box flickered gently, casting soft shadows across the walls. The whispers had settled into a low hum, a rhythm that seemed to match his own heartbeat. He opened the notebook again. The pages were filled with words he hadn't written, yet they made sense. To see is to understand. To understand is to remember. To remember is to change. A shiver ran down his spine. The mirror figure tilted its head, watching him, patient and still. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. Its presence alone was enough. Evan felt the weight of the chamber around him. The air smelled of old stone and earth, and faintly of memories he couldn't place. He realized the house wasn't just a building. It was alive, and it had chosen him to witness its story. He placed his hands on the stone table. The objects there, photographs, journals, trinkets, pulsed faintly under his touch. Each one carried a memory, a life, a moment that had been hidden from the world. And now, for some reason, they were his to see. The whispers grew a little louder, shaping themselves into words he could hear. You must face them. The past is not gone. It waits. Evan swallowed hard. He had come seeking answers, but he realized he hadn't expected to become part of the story itself, to witness the lives the house had kept, to feel their presence pressing softly against him. He took a deep breath and reached for the first photograph. The face of a child stared back at him, eyes wide with wonder. And in that moment, he felt a connection, a thread of memory, lost and waiting, reaching across time. The mirror pulsed faintly. Its surface shimmered as if reflecting not just the room, but all the lives within it. Evan realized he was not alone. The house, the memories, and the figure in the mirror were all connected, and they had something to show him. Look, the whisper urged. Evan closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, the golden light seemed to spread further, illuminating shapes that had been hidden in the corners of the chamber. Figures of people, faces frozen in time, moved softly, silently, like echoes of the past. And Evan knew with a strange certainty that this was only the beginning. Evan took a slow, steadying breath. The figures in the corners of the chamber moved subtly, shifting like mist caught in a gentle breeze. They were faint, almost translucent, yet he could see the emotions etched into their faces. Fear, hope, sorrow, joy. He lifted the notebook again. The pages fluttered open to a passage that seemed new, written just for him. Do not fear them. They only wish to be remembered. Speak, and you will hear. Evan's voice trembled as he whispered aloud. Who are you? The air shifted. The whispers rose slightly more distinct, carrying fragments of words he could almost understand. And then one of the figures moved closer. A woman, dressed in clothes that looked both old and familiar. Her eyes met his, and for a moment he felt as if she could see into the very core of him. She raised a hand slowly, pointing toward the mirror. The golden light shimmered in response, flowing like liquid across the surface. The notebook pulsed warmly in his hands. Lines of ink appeared. The mirror reflects what is hidden, not what is seen. Look carefully. See not just the past, but what remains. Evan stepped closer to the mirror. The figure inside mirrored his movements, but with subtle differences, a tilt of the head, a pause, a gesture that he hadn't made. And then he realized the mirror didn't show the present. It showed memory, every secret, every moment the house had preserved, every life it had touched. The woman reached out through the reflection, though her hand never crossed the glass. Evan felt a pull, gentle, insistent, like she wanted him to understand something important. A whisper floated through the chamber. You are the witness now. The stories are yours to carry. Only by remembering can the light endure. Evan swallowed hard. He had entered the chamber seeking answers, but he was beginning to understand that the house's purpose was more than discovery. It was teaching him, slowly, carefully, the weight of memory, the duty of witness. He reached a hand toward the mirror. His reflection shimmered, rippled, and then a new image appeared behind his own. It was the woman, smiling faintly, urging him forward. And for the first time, Evan felt ready. Evan touched the mirror again. This time, the surface rippled under his fingers like water. The woman's figure moved closer, her gaze steady, patient. He felt no fear, only a strange calm, as if the house itself had whispered, "You are safe here." The golden light from the box stretched across the chamber, illuminating more of the shadows. Figures shifted in the corners, children playing quietly, an older man reading, a young couple speaking in hushed tones. They weren't ghostly. They were memories, preserved, waiting for someone to see them. Evan opened the notebook. The lines of ink now formed a sequence of instructions, gentle but clear. Listen, watch, remember, speak, and the past will speak to you. He spoke softly, almost like a lullaby. I will remember. I will listen. The woman's figure smiled faintly, then extended her hand through the mirror. Evan didn't hesitate. When their hands met, he felt warmth, like sunlight filtered through water. A memory unfolded. He saw a family gathered around a table. A child laughed, a dog barked, and sunlight streamed through a window he had never seen before. The memory was so vivid, so real. He could almost smell the bread baking in the oven. And then it shifted. The joy turned to fear. A storm outside, windows rattling, shadows lengthening. The figures moved in panic, and he realized he was seeing a story of loss, of hidden sorrow, preserved in this chamber. The whispers rose, soft but insistent. Every life, every moment, every choice, all are remembered here. You must carry them. Evan felt the weight of the chamber settle on him, not oppressive, but profound. He understood now that the house was more than walls and stone. It was a keeper of memory, a guardian of what had been forgotten. And the mirror was the heart of it all. It showed not just the past, but the echoes of lives waiting to be honored, waiting to be known. Evan whispered, almost to himself, I will see. I will remember. I will not forget. The golden light pulsed softly, filling the chamber with warmth. The shadows seemed to ease. The whispers faded to a gentle hum. And for the first time, the house felt peaceful. Evan stood in the center of the hidden chamber. The golden light from the box now bathed the walls completely, casting a soft, even glow. The whispers had quieted to near silence, as if the house itself was holding its breath. He approached the mirror. The woman's figure waited patiently, still smiling faintly, her hand hovering just beyond the surface. Evan felt the notebook pulse gently, guiding him forward. A single line of ink appeared. The last memory awaits. Are you ready? Evan took a deep breath. He had faced shadows, whispers, and echoes of lives long gone. He had felt fear, sadness, and awe. And yet, he knew that this memory would be different. He reached for the mirror. This time, he didn't touch it. He merely looked. The reflection shimmered, and the chamber seemed to dissolve around him. Shapes blurred, walls faded, and he found himself standing in a sunlit field he had never seen before. The air smelled of grass and rain, warm and comforting. A child ran past him, laughing, chasing a kite that danced with the wind. A couple walked hand in hand, smiling at each other. Everything was ordinary. Everything was peaceful. Then, slowly, the colors began to fade. Shadows crept across the field. The wind whispered secrets he could almost understand. The child froze mid-laugh, looking directly at him, eyes wide with recognition. Evan realized these weren't just memories of the house. They were memories of choices, moments that had been lost or forgotten, moments that needed acknowledgement. The whispers returned, softer than ever. Every story must end. Every memory must be honored. Only then can you leave. Evan closed his eyes, letting the memory wash over him. He felt the emotions of those in the field: joy, fear, love, sorrow, and understood that the house was not punishing him. It was teaching him, showing him the weight and beauty of life, even in the smallest moments. He opened his eyes to the mirror again. The woman's figure was smiling more clearly now. She reached through the glass, and for the first time, Evan realized that he could step forward, not into fear, but into understanding. Evan stepped closer to the mirror. The golden light filled the chamber like soft morning sunlight. The shadows of the past had retreated to the corners, quiet and still. He focused on the reflection. The woman's hand reached toward him again, and this time he moved forward without hesitation. The mirror's surface rippled under his gaze, and slowly he found himself stepping into the memory itself. The field of grass and laughter surrounded him, warm and alive. The sun felt gentle on his face, and for the first time in a long while, he felt entirely safe. The child ran past him again, giggling, and Evan realized he could remember every detail. The sound of shoes brushing against the grass, the wind lifting the kite, the way the sunlight caught in the child's hair. The couple approached, smiling, and spoke softly, their voices blending into the whispering wind. Evan felt the emotions of the moment: joy, love, hope settled deep within him. Then the whispers came again, calm and guiding. To leave, you must honor the final memory. Feel it fully. Remember it completely. Carry it with you. Evan closed his eyes. He let himself feel the memory, not as a visitor, but as part of it. He breathed in the warmth, the laughter, the quiet moments of connection. He acknowledged every smile, every glance, every heartbeat. The mirror pulsed softly. The woman's figure smiled warmly, her eyes full of understanding. She spoke, though the words seemed to come from the air around him rather than her lips. You are ready. Evan opened his eyes. He was back in the hidden chamber. The golden light from the box glowed softly. The shadows had faded completely, leaving the room calm and still. The notebook lay open before him. The ink had formed a final line. Remembered, witnessed, released. Evan exhaled slowly, feeling a weight lift from his chest. The house had shared its story. It had shown him the power of memory, the value of every life, and the quiet strength of understanding. And for the first time, he felt that he could leave. Evan stepped away from the mirror. The chamber felt different now. The shadows were gone, leaving only soft golden light, warm and inviting. The whispers had faded entirely, replaced by a quiet that felt almost like breathing. He looked around at the objects on the stone table. Photographs, journals, and trinkets lay untouched, still carrying the stories of lives long past. Evan realized he had seen them, understood them, and in doing so, had become part of the house's memory too. The woman's figure appeared one last time in the mirror. She nodded gently, a silent acknowledgement of the journey he had completed. Evan felt a sense of peace, a quiet satisfaction that he hadn't known in years. He picked up the notebook one final time. The ink shimmered faintly and then faded, leaving the pages blank. The message was clear. He had witnessed, he had remembered, and now it was time to move on. Evan walked toward the door. Each step felt lighter, freer. The house had shared its secrets, its burdens, and its memories. And now it let him leave, carrying the lessons it had given him. As he stepped into the night outside, the air felt fresh and cool. The stars above twinkled softly, and the world seemed larger, calmer, and quieter than it had before. He paused and looked back at the house. It was still and silent, but he knew it would always be alive inside, holding its stories for the next visitor who was ready to see, to remember, and to understand. Evan exhaled slowly. He walked down the path, the golden light fading behind him, leaving only the soft whisper of the night. And for the first time in a long while, he felt that the past could rest. Tonight, the memories had been honored. Tonight, the house was at peace. And tonight, so was he.